Alright, so this is going to be a little bit different tutorial. I'm actually going to use one of the parts that I created in class and go through step by step what I was doing and actually explain it in this video because while I was doing the operations in class, I wasn't really talking about what I was doing, why I was making certain decisions. Alright, so um, what I just did there, again, don't if you forgot from the tutorials, you can slide this whole bar up and kind of you go back in history to a certain spot. So that's what I'm going to do here. And then if I right click on box extrude or just go straight here to this, right click, edit sketch, should be pretty familiar for you right now. Okay, so when I was creating the sketch, the first thing I did was I selected a center point circle. Remember, there's perimeter and circle. Perimeter circle and center point circle. Selected the origin. So again, here are my relationships. This would be the one that makes the point that I added, or with respect to the origin. The other coincidents are actually with respect to other features up top here. So you see how this, when I hover over this, it's saying this point is coincident with that. If I select this, that says coincident, this line was down at that point. So that just highlights that you can actually make a point and a line coincident with each other. Okay, this is the same thing. The next thing I did is I went up here and let's see here. So what I did is actually, I started to create a line. Okay, so if I were to create another line here, if you see this for construction, if you click the line and then use for construction, you get what you see here. Now, I want to make sure it's clear. These things are extremely useful. And when you look at the point here, that's blue. However, when you look at my sketch, it says fully defined. Anything that's for construction can be underdefined because it's, as it just sounds, it's using it just for construction. Okay, now next question might be, okay, Alex, doctor, whatever you want to call me. This line is vertical. So I wanted to create the next features I was going to create with some sort of line that was vertical, just so I had a place to actually say, okay, if I have this arc that I created next in the set of operations, then I can say, okay, the center point of that arc, and so I just placed these 2 points, and then the center point I wanted to be on this line, and do you see how I made these 2 points horizontal? So I don't actually have any dimensions about the radius. So I'll make back zoom out. I don't have a radius on that. Should surprise you. As you're watching this video, think about why I don't need it. Okay? If I have a distance away of 2 to that line, and I have these 2 horizontally to each other, I fully defined that this is going to be a semicircle. Okay? So then I don't actually have to go and actually say what this this radius is. Okay? If that's not clear, stop me in class and I'll try to make that more clear. Alright, so again, these lines, they're not going to be included, the 4 construction lines, they will not be included with you go and make your 3-dimensional feature, extrude cut, etc. So the next thing I did was actually then, once I had this semicircle pretty much almost fully defined, then I just took those and went and drew the lines up until my edge. Okay. Then I did the same thing for the other edge. Okay. Now, the last bit here is once I had those 2 lines up into these points. The only thing that we don't have with this little feature here is we could have moved these points left and right. I can't right now because I have to do that. So let me just right click and delete that dimension real quick. So this is what I'm talking about. These things are tangent to that semicircle, so it's limited to only going to be wider or thinner. Okay? Then I just slapped that dimension on there too. Just doing this for demonstration. Okay, now I want to keep going and get you to think about. Notice how this is my contour, and I'm going to use that word a little bit more when I talk about, okay, what are you extruding into 3D? So I'm going to trace this contour, and I'm going to do one better and exit my smart dimension mode and get to my select and select chain. So it says arc, that's my outer circle. Well, was a circle before I, cut it, trimmed it. And then arc is for this little arc down here. And then the two lines that I drew. Okay, so this is my contour all around here. This sort of shading in here highlights that SOLIDWORKS knows what to extrude. Okay, so if I finish that, the next step is I simply gave it a dimension, extrude to. The next thing I did, and this is intentional, trying to get you to think about what would happen if you tried to let me go back one step. What if I had this and I was thinking somehow I could circular pattern this feature, and the whole point of kind of showing you is that you can't do that. So I'm just kind of showing you what you might be thinking, but you have to you actually have to pattern a feature. You can't pattern this feature, which is actually the boss extrude. If that doesn't make sense, I'll say it a different way. If we were trying to circular pattern this feature as I did, what you'll notice is it filled in that cut that we had, or sort of cut, if you will, that cutout that I had that was intentional in my first sketch. That's because it was circular patterning. I'll edit this feature to show you the visual. It was circular. It was doing a circular pattern of this feature that was cut out, but also it was just sort of rotating the whole shape of this circle, and then ended up actually filling in one of these spaces. I don't know if there's even a way that I could have, if I just did instancing. Do you see how it's going to rotate that, because there's so much geometry of that circular shape that no matter what sort of options I use, it's going to fill in that. So it's going to actually do something that I didn't intend for it to do, and I lost that feature, so to speak. However, this is also intentional because I didn't really lose the sketch or entities from that sketch. So what I showed in class is I said I want to right click on the sketch one and then show the sketch, because as I said in class, whenever you create a 3D feature, it always hides the sketch because it assumes you're done with that and you don't need it anymore. Sometimes that's fine. Most of the time it's fine. Sometimes maybe you want to use some information from that sketch. There's various scenarios. So if you show it, you can use it in a next operation, like this next sketch. So what I did, one thing you'll notice is not good, is I didn't fully define that. But what I did is actually went in here, and you see how there's absolutely no dimensions, there's no relationships, it just has this on edge, on edge, on edge, but for the arc. Those are the edges from the previous sketch, okay? Now, in The other sketch I did, I think it actually ended up doing a trim of the edge of that circle that I first created. So I didn't have a simple arc right here, but I could easily select, hold Control, then select this edge and make them, in this case, co-radial, because they're sharing the same radius, co-radial. Now I'm fully defined, finish that. So now I got basically my cutout feature, if you will, back after I did this. I could have just deleted the circular pattern, right? Okay. If that doesn't make sure, you can try this. You can follow these exact steps and then convince yourself that I could have just deleted the circular pattern and I had this shape, okay? However, the problem would still exist. I don't have a feature to pattern. I needed to cut. So that's why I did this second sketch and then did this cut. And I talked a lot in class, and a lot of, almost all the time, you can, unless it's a certain depth of cut, you can do through all. That's typically fine, but I'd encourage a class to actually go up to surface, all right? So that's where that cut extrude ends. Now, then I went and, before I forget, actually I'm going to go ahead and go back and hide this because I don't want to show up in my drawing if I'm going to make a drawing file for this. Before I actually go and talk about the circular pattern, you notice these little dashed lines? If you don't see them in your part, go to View, Hide Show, and then click to press to show temporary axes. That's what these things are. Alright, so now when I look at and I edit the feature, when I went in, there were two things that it was asking me for. So, what direction do I want to go? Seems kind of strange, right? Should know what it is. I could have done a certain number of dimensions, but let me go ahead and just delete this circular pattern so I can walk you through and create a pattern. It's hidden underneath this linear pattern, and you're coming here. So previously it was showing a direction of like a face, but what it didn't actually show is that if I actually include the axis that I want to go about, and then the features and faces. What feature? The cut extrude. So again, this little open thing makes it really easy to come back to. Instead of having to go over here, you can actually select the feature tree, the tab, back to your feature tree for the design from this property manager. So I just went in here. There are times when you might want to or need to select bodies. I won't go into that in this video, but I mention that here to make sure you select features if you have a single feature that you want to do your circular pattern with. And then I say OK, and that's how it looks. If I go back and edit feature, it should say axis there, so that's good. Okay, that's how I did that. Alright, that's the end of this video. Don't forget to save.